So I'm out here, guys, slinging around what so many of you would consider like the ugliest looking spinnerbait. But yet it's one that I catch a pile of fish on. It's becoming like a go-to color for me. And it's this guy. It's chartreuse, black and blue. And then I've got the red power stinger, paddling power stinger, black nickel blade on it. And a lot of you guys out there, when you see me throw this, whether it's in tournaments where I'm throwing it on like a vibrating jig or on the spinnerbait here, a lot of you guys are like, what are you throwing? It's such an ugly looking color. And I'm not going to sit here and say it is a pretty color. I'm not going to sit here and say that it mimics any sort of natural forage species of the bass. But what I am going to tell you is it produces a really good contrasting color situation. And the more I fish and the more I talk to professional anglers and the more I read about like research that has actually been done on fish activity and fish response, one of the biggest things that seems to contribute to success in getting fish to react to baits is contrasting colors. So what do I mean by contrasting colors specifically? So that's basically where you have changes in colors. Generally, I'd say the best contrast would be like going from a white to a black. You have full contrast from the white to the black. It's the full spectrum of colors. In this case, I would argue that I've got the same going on with all the chartreuse on the bottom of this Picasso spinnerbait mixed in with black and blue on the top. And then I've got the red in the middle, which is kind of an odd color, right? It kind of falls right in the middle there. It's not completely dark, not completely light, but the one thing I'll tell you about the red, and a lot of us know this already, is red is one of the first colors to kind of lose its color as you go deeper in the water column. So what that means is the red kind of fades out and the baits generally turn to a grayish or a black, just a dark hue. So you lose the color. So in that case, you know, I would argue that's almost disappearing, but I like having that paddling power stinger as a trailer because it adds some bulk to the bait. It gives the bait a little bit more tail kick. I can keep the bait higher up. And really what's happening is that bait, that color of that bait is almost fading out. It's not creating the giant profile that you would think it would with this big spinnerbait with a big paddle tail on the back. The fish don't necessarily get a good look at that. And the key here with all of that combined is the contrasting color. What I believe that's doing is it's creating a triggering mechanism in the fish to feed. And the reason I say that is pretty much all of the forage species out here, where regardless of where you're at in the country, has contrasting colors. And what I mean by that is if you were to look at a fish, the bottom of the fish is generally going to be much lighter than the top of the fish. So the belly of the fish is going to be like a white or a yellow, just a much lighter color. And the backs of most species of fish are generally darker, whether it's a black or a dark green or a brown. It's just you've got contrast there. And the same can be said for bluegills. The same can be said for tadpoles. The same can be said for crayfish. The bellies are almost always lighter than the top of them, the backs of them. So when those species move, they have a contrast to it. And I personally believe that that's something that has almost been genetically introduced into each fish when they grow up. It's just simply they see the contrast, and that triggers a feeding mechanism because they know that their food sources in the wild generally have contrasting colors. Now, the other thing I'll say is I also believe that contrast gives them something to locate and strike at. So if they know that there's a contrast there, they see the contrast, it triggers them to feed because they think it's food, but it also gives them something to hone in on. It's easier for them to hone in on some form of contrast than it is a solid bait. Now, I know this isn't always going to be the case, and it's not simply throw a bait with contrasting colors and you're going to catch fish. And if you throw a bait that's one solid color, like a solid green pumpkin, that you're not going to catch fish. I'm just saying I think it's something that helps trigger a feeding mechanism in those fish. And on days where the fish are not active, every little bit of help that we can get is a huge factor. you know, the key, in my opinion, the key between a successful fisherman, like a professional fisherman, and somebody that does it more on the weekends or just is not catching nearly as many fish, a lot of it's just simply the fact that the better anglers are able to trigger a reaction strike out of the fish. And it's that reaction strike that takes a fish that's not in an active feeding time period to eating, even though they weren't actually hungry. So generally speaking, in order to do that, you got to be triggering their reaction to bite. So whether that's by ripping a bait by them real fast, by, you know, you drop a bait literally on top of their nose and they suck it in because they can't help it, or maybe it's because there's contrasting colors in your bait, which just triggers that genetic code in them to react to it. So it's something to keep in mind. It's really interesting to me how over the years it really does seem like contrasting colors is something that can really generate some good strikes for you and trigger inactive fish to bite on days when fishing is tough. And I can tell you right now, in my area, fishing has not been great this time of year, and we're out here having a really good time catching them on this spinnerbait that's got contrasting colors in it. And that video, I don't know if it'll be out before this video or after this video, but you'll be able to see it because it's the video where I'm throwing this big 3/4 ounce swinging titanium spinnerbait, single Colorado blade. Just a lot of you guys are out there going, you're throwing that during the day? That's a night color. Well, it's a night color, but I'll tell you what, it's a great daytime color too. I've caught some monster bass on it over the years. So much so, that color I call the big chip because I've won a lot of money on it. I'm not going to tell you where. If you're a local, you can probably figure out where. But the point being here, guys, is contrasting colors. Try it. So if you like green pumpkin, maybe take a marker pen and put a little dab of chartreuse on one, you know, down one back, or, you know, take a black Sharpie and go down the other side. And it doesn't have to be top to bottom. I mean, I do feel like if you bought a Max Scent General, you know, that's green pumpkin with the black tip, that's enough in itself for a black with a blue tip on it. Like, I think that works. But you also see a lot of laminated soft plastics now where the green pumpkin might be dark on the top and lighter on the belly. Well, I think there's a reason for all of that, guys. So anyways, check it out. Just pay attention to it. Next time you go fishing, the baits that you have, do they have contrasting colors? And if so, do you feel like you're getting more strikes on those baits? So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you found today's video helpful and informative. If so, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.